This morning, Zohran Mamdani is officially the Democratic nominee for New York City mayor, and he's now facing new attacks from President Trump. The president is now threatening to arrest Mamdani if he blocks immigration arrests in New York City, something that Mamdani has promised to do. But there is a lot more questions about, as he is now continuing to campaign, that Mamdani is also facing continued and serious questions about his stance on Israel. CNN's Harry Enten is joining me now and is running the numbers on this, taking this and looking also more broadly, because it speaks to the broader views in Democratic politics specifically, also speak to what's going on with Mamdani and this race for mayor in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, look, Andrew Cuomo during the primary attacked Mamdani as being insufficiently pro-Israel. I'm not quite sure the former governor understood how much the politics have changed around this issue among Democrats. What are we talking about here? All right, who Democrats sympathize more with, Israelis or Palestinians? In 2017, the Democratic Party was a pro-Israeli party. Look at this. They sympathized with the Israelis by 13 points, more with the Israelis than the Palestinians. But look at this sea change. Now Democrats sympathize more with the Palestinians by 43 points. Oh, my God, that is a change in the margin of 56 points over the course of just 8 years. So all of a sudden, it's the pro-Palestinian position that actually reigns supreme in Democratic politics, not the Israeli position. And that is part of the reason why Mamdani was able to do so well in this primary, because those attacks over Israel, simply put, did not ring true for Democrats. They're now on the side of the Palestinians, not the Israelis.
I mean, this is a much bigger issue, specifically with Mamdani, though. I mean, an outspoken critic of Israel. He's facing continued criticism, though, for not being outspoken enough against anti-Semitism, that is for sure. But on this, talk about Democrats and how broadly how this really is shifting.
Yeah, so, you see this among Democrats overall, right? But we know that Mamdani's base was younger voters within the Democratic Party. And so I want to break it down
with younger Democrats.
Correct. So take a look here. Who age 18 to 49 Democrats sympathize more with, the Israelis or the Palestinians? Again, in 2017, younger Democrats sympathized more with the Israelis by 14 points. Look at this shift now. Palestinians, they sympathize more with the Palestinians by 57 points. That is an over 70-point shift in the margin in just a matter of 8 years. So the bottom line is, Mamdani's base within the Democratic Party and the base of the Democratic Party of younger voters, younger Democrats, have changed tremendously on this issue in 8 years' time. I rarely ever see shifts like this, Kate, in which you see one side of the equation leading by 14 points 8 years ago, and then all of a sudden the other side of the equation leading by 57 points. The bottom line is the politics around the Israelis and the Palestinians have shifted tremendously among Democrats, and they've shifted specifically tremendously among Democrats who are under the age of 50, younger Democrats who are Mamdani's base, and also the base of Democratic socialists like himself, like Bernie Sanders, like AOC. They have just shifted more so than I think that anyone could possibly have imagined, say, 8 years ago.
Yeah. Harry, thank you so much, taking a real closer look at Democratic politics and how you're seeing that shift transition. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
John.
Right with us now, Axios senior contributor Margaret Talev and Spectrum News political anchor and host of the Big Deal podcast, Errol Louis. I want to take a tangent to that discussion right there. I still want to talk about Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee to be mayor of New York City, but I want to focus on a little bit of an exchange he has had with President Trump, because President Trump yesterday was asked what would happen if Mamdani stood in the way of ICE arresting undocumented immigrants or apprehending undocumented immigrants in New York City. I want you to hear what the president said and threatened, and then I want you to hear the response from the Democratic nominee for mayor.
We'll have to arrest him. A lot of people are saying he's here illegally. We're going to look at everything.
What we're seeing in President Trump's rhetoric is an attempt to focus on who I am, where I'm from, what I look like, how I sound, as opposed to what I'm actually fighting for. Because to do so would be to display the stark contrast in our sincerity in actually delivering for the very working people who've been left behind by our politics.
It just so happens that that interview that you saw with Zohran Mamdani was conducted by Errol Louis, part of an extensive discussion last night. So, Errol, what do you make of the back and forth here and how each of those two gentlemen are positioning themselves?
Well, John, good morning. As is often the case, what we have is a Republican who wants to beat up on a Democrat and sort of demonize him and use it to rally the Republican base and raise money and do all kinds of things. And frankly, Zoran Mamdani can kind of do the same thing in the opposite direction. Donald Trump is very unpopular in New York City. He lost New York City twice when he ran for president, even though this is his hometown. And Zoran Mamdani is aware of that. And it never hurts a Democrat to bash Donald Trump. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that going back and forth as each tries to exploit the political vulnerabilities of their adversary.
Margaret, it sounds like what Errol's saying is you have a president who wants to bash a Democratic candidate and a Democratic candidate who wants to be bashed by the president, in a way.
Yeah, and to Errol's point, they do both get something political out of it. There's another trend developing, too, where we're seeing the president talk more and more about this idea of forcing denaturalization, trying to really test the limits of what he can do as the executive in terms of the immigration status or the citizen status of people who were born in other countries, became U.S. citizens, did the things that are so often talked about as playing by the rules. You wait your turn, you study what it means to be an American, you take the citizenship test, you do all the right things, you become a citizen. And increasingly now, he and the Justice Department are talking about increasing denaturalization for naturalized citizens who in some ways are seen to have sort of betrayed U.S. ideals. And right now, this is to some extent rhetoric, but we have actually seen a huge uptick since the beginning of the first Trump administration, since 2017, in the number of cases being discussed for denaturalization. You saw him sort of float this as a threat against Elon Musk, who, of course, is originally from South Africa, when now that he is tangling again with the president. So I'd keep an eye on that also.
That's a really interesting point, the comparison between Elon Musk and Zoran Mamdani and the mutual threats made against each of them there. Errol, just one more point on Mamdani. For all the differences between him and President Trump, there's also some really interesting similarities in the way that they campaign.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, both of them focused on affordability with an almost obsessive focus. And it's really very interesting. We're looking at the numbers. We just are getting preliminary numbers, but there are some Trump Mamdani voters out there. We've identified some areas of New York City where they went for Trump just a few months ago, and now they're voting for Zoran Mamdani. And it's a wake-up call really to both parties, that something that will go beyond any other kind of traditional political consideration is that gnawing feeling of not being able to pay your bills on a daily basis. The voters have signaled every way they possibly could that will override almost every other consideration, and politicians ignore that reality at their peril.
Margaret, I want you to weigh in on this, but also I want you to weigh in on this new social media post from President Trump on this huge bill that could get a vote in the House today. He talks about growth and everything else, but he also issues a little bit of a threat here. He said, Republicans, don't let the radical left Democrats push you around. We've got all the cards, he says. What jumps out to you there?
That line actually jumps out to me when I saw that tweet, or whatever we're calling that, is the idea that this really goes to his state of mind. He's saying, I'm controlling the levers now. I'm the president. I'm in control of Congress. And right now, he's got a Supreme Court that's delivering several favorable 6-3 rulings in terms of bolstering his ability to use executive power, and the federal district court judges' constraints in being able to push back on it more broadly than case by case. But I think that this argument about growth is a bit of a preview for what we're going to see once the bill, formerly known as the Big Beautiful Bill, gets final passage. And this really turns into a 2026 midterm messaging contest. You're going to see Democrats talk about the reality that over the next decade, this is going to strip healthcare coverage for millions of underinsured people. But you're going to see President Trump try to make the case that overall this will fuel his growth plans. Never mind the ballooning debt. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. So this is the messaging battle that's shaping up, and we're starting to see the contours of it today, even before the final passage.
Margaret Errol Louis, great to see you both this morning. Thank you so much.